Middlekauff.
Hey.
Welcome, everybody, on this Tuesday, the final Tuesday of 2021. We are live on YouTube with a lot to talk about. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm glad you made it to this podcast, right? We had the emergency podcast on Monday. If you missed that, there'll be another one on Wednesday. So it's a absolutely packed week, and we're glad you're making time for this show. Thank you.
Did you know the playoff games were on Friday?
Yeah.
For some reason, our buddy Hawk texted me. He's like, hey, you want to go downtown or something, watch the games? I'm like, on Friday? I was thrown off. I don't know. I thought they were Saturday, but I guess it makes sense, right? Is the Rose Bowl
Saturday?
In theory, it's on New Year's Day.
Yep.
I'm a little thrown off. The timing of these games, mainly because, I don't know. My days aren't in alignment. Right?
You'd like them on a Saturday. I wouldn't mind them on Saturday. Like, why couldn't they be on just New Year's Day, right?
Yeah.
But you got all your New Year's 6 games. So I feel like in my mind, we've had them on a Friday before, but it doesn't make sense that would have happened. It probably hasn't. It feels to me like it has, but I
don't know if you've noticed, nobody's doing anything this week, so it probably wouldn't even matter. Nobody's working. Not a soul.
It would just be an overpopulation of Saturday, right? Do we have Saturday NFL games this week? We got a couple?
No, we don't. We just have Sunday and a Monday night game.
Feels like a real missed opportunity for the NFL. When all the Saturday games get canceled, there's going to be no football Saturday.
I agree. I could have used a Saturday NFL game for sure.
You can use Saturday for Tito's. This podcast is sponsored by Tito's. Tito's handmade vodka, #1 vodka in America, where some of us have graduated from John Daly's and Tito's and sodas to White Russians. Word on the street is the White Russians were a big hit at the Middlekauff Christmas.
Pretty flavorful. My I don't even know what she would be considered. My brother's wife's mom, so it's his mother-in-law.
Sister-in-law?
My second mother-in-law. I don't know, but she brought some homemade Kahlua, and just went a little Tito's, a little homemade Kahlua, and then just a little bit of eggnog on the top, and it is. Whew.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Wow. Kahlua is homemade Kahlua? What does that mean?
Well, it's like rum, coffee. I don't know. I mean, it looked black like Kahlua. She said it was homemade Kahlua, and we used it in the Tito's eggnogs, or the Tito's White Russians with eggnog. And
so you made the eggnog?
No, I mean the eggnog we just bought in a from the store.
Okay.
Yeah. So a White Russian is just Kahlua, vodka, and cream. You can use like the cream you would put in your coffee. So instead of the cream or a milk or a half and half, you just use the eggnog, and it is legit.
And I'm going to ask an embarrassing question now. Eggnog, like, what does that taste like? Is it sweet?
Yeah, it's a creamy. It's like a creamy vanilla-y, half and halfy type texture, I would guess. You've never had eggnog?
Never had eggnog.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been, a lot of Hanukkah parties early in my life, and then whenever I've been offered eggnog, it's been without really thinking about it. I'm good. I just kind of denied it. Just always kind of felt weird.
You gotta live, guy. You gotta live. But I'm not a huge eggnog guy, but just you just have to put probably like a shot worth in the White Russian, so it just adds a little kind of creamy, vanilla-y flavor.
Wow. All right. It's not too late for that, or whatever you're making for the new year. Do it with Tito's. Tito's handmade vodka. How about the TikTok the person sent us of the guy, definitely a retiree, putting all his eggnog in one big water jug, flipping the thing over, and putting the spout in the corner of his kitchen.
Pretty crazy. That was a lot of vodka. That's a lot of vodka.
That guy is back to college.
I know. That thing, you get yourself in some trouble in that thing. I'll tell you that much. Especially if you had someone over and they didn't know and they were just like dying of thirst. Imagine if one of the kids wasn't paying attention, just went for a run in the summer.
Could not be in a house with kids. That cannot be in a house with kids.
No.
Tito's is 6-time distilled in copper pots, not columns. It's more labor intensive, yes, but it's also better. Distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof. Crafted to be savored responsibly. And we appreciate
you see Joshua's comment there. It's pretty good.
I don't, but I think you can throw it up.
Oh yeah, eggnog is the how did I do this thing again?
Just click on it.
Eggnog is the Jimmy G of the holidays. Get your hopes up and curdle in your mouth. I like eggnog better than milk, and not that I drink milk. I actually drink chocolate milk every once in a while.
I was behind a guy at the grocery store 2 days ago. He had 6% milk, and I said, "Wow, what's that like?" He's like, "What I do is I get the 4% chocolate milk, and then I mix it with 6% milk, and that's the best kind of chocolate milk you can have." I was like, "That sounds never heard of that 6% milk, but
that'd
straight
be
from
pretty
the cow."
intense. Yeah.
All right, John. Here's a comment from Filthy Swift 49. Let's make the Treyoffs. Clearly a Niners fan. So let us begin this podcast with Jimmy Garoppolo conspiracy theories. Is Jimmy Garoppolo hurt? When did he get hurt? Who found out that he was hurt? Did he tell the 49ers that he was hurt? Or did he tell Adam Schefter that he was hurt? And as we record this before Wednesday, will he ever get unhurt before the end of this season? Should we rattle through all the different conspiracy theories?
Well, let's just start on a video that went in my timeline. I shared it with you. I'm sure some people saw it, of him just unscrewing a water bottle. He had a very nice suit on for the Thursday night game, and he unscrewed the water bottle with his throwing hand. And there was it wasn't a LeBron, like he showed up at the press conference, just unscrewed the water bottle. If you didn't know, you wouldn't have known, and he would have looked completely fine. He was smiling, acting like a rough loss, but you did not see anything wrong with the thumb.
Yes, I was a little alarmed by that. To answer your question, I think that was your question. Now, I also am aware, injuries evolve over time. Sometimes they hurt the most when they happen, right? Like a stub toe that isn't a fracture. Sometimes they hurt worse later. We've seen this happen in football where somebody gets hurt, plays a game, turns out the next day, cracked rib or something like that. Although cracked rib's a pretty sudden injury. So it definitely has my attention, has me questioning things. Although I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you suffer an injury and that injury, hurts more 24 hours after the fact. What did you think?
Well, on the most basic level, do you think, as of recording this on Tuesday, he's like, do you believe to your core 100% that he's super injured, like they're saying on the internet streets?
I think he's hurt. I think his thumb is injured, yes. And I think to say that he's got a fracture is kind of you could get away with lying about it if you never let anybody else test them.
Ligaments too ripped. Right?
Ligaments too, right? But ligaments, technically, I think Trey Lance had a fracture, right? That did not require surgery. Russell Wilson had a fracture that did require surgery, right? Am I right about that?
Mallet finger, yep.
Mallet finger, Ryan Mallet finger. I think there's different levels of fractures. A little crack. I would imagine this one's not going to need surgery if it's a fake injury, because you can't fake the surgery too. I guess you could. You could say he had successful surgery performed by Dr. John Middlekauff. I'm like,
well, not everything. I fractured a toe once, and there was no surgery needed. It just takes time.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there are fractures that don't require surgery. My guess is this is going to be one of them.
Yeah. I think there's a chance that this is... Okay, let's just dive into theories and why I think this. The number one theory that, I got...
think what? What do you mean?
Well, I'm unsure. I just thought the more Monday played out, we did our emergency podcast, and then you just let it kind of germinate, and you think about it, and you sit on it, and you get people texting you. You got some moles and ears of the street, and you got all these different angles. You got all these thoughts going through your head. I think it's fair to say that it was a little fishy.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
yeah. Agreed.
Very fishy the way... It's not fishy that in football, when someone goes out to practice, and the way for people listening to this that have never been to an NFL practice, the reason people like me and you that don't, cover the team, I wouldn't consider ourselves cover the team. We talk about the team. But after training camp, we would never go to a practice, mainly because you're not allowed to go to practice. You go for 10 minutes. But in that 10-minute window, that is where we often, the team wouldn't just, if the team didn't have to, they wouldn't have told anyone that Jimmy was out, right? They probably would have kept that to themselves and just let the week play out. Now, it's impossible to avoid because the media is allowed, even for a fraction of time, and you start just counting heads, and you go, well, there's 7. or there's 5. Where's 10? And you don't see Jimmy. So then they ask the question, and Kyle has no choice. And the injury, and even Mayoko quoted Rap Sheet's tweet. It went from a small injury to like this fracture UCL injury. So the injury grew after Kyle talked. Now, as we've, what coaches say with injuries or playing status, you always got to take that with a grain of salt. So it's hard. It's not like I'm saying Kyle was lying, but it's just this. My number one theory is that this is a little bit of a stretch, but I do think it's possible that this happened, that they benched Jimmy Garoppolo. And they were going to, after that game, that was a disaster situation for Kyle and John Lynch. It ended up John liking a tweet. Kyle Shanahan, he hadn't slept all week. I mean, I would imagine 10 total hours from Sunday night till Thursday the game. And then he has a good game plan, and Jimmy fucked it up. Like, that game was squarely on the quarterback. Nobody else, not even the corners, because if he doesn't throw the picks, A.J. Brown's 1 touchdown is not enough to beat them. And Kyle snaps and can't take it anymore. And he realizes only a couple games left. This kid has been playing well in practice. It's just time. But they run a business, and Jimmy is an asset, and benching him, he would never get traded. Now, he still might not get traded, but this way, you say an injury, which is not great for his trade value either, you're able to transition to Trey Lance without, quote-unquote, saying you benched him and making that a whole thing. He just got injured. Players get injured all the time. Now, the hole in that theory is, how do you fake an injury in 2021 without people knowing? Jimmy eventually has to come to the facility, see his teammates. Could be a little weird, but I do think that's on the table. That would be my number one conspiracy theory that I think is plausible, that they essentially benched Jimmy Garoppolo and used the injury to, I would say, circumvent saying that they benched him.
Yeah, to protect. We know that they've spent a lot of time trying to maintain Jimmy Garoppolo's value. We know that. They've spent a lot of time over the years over the last year, right, going back to before the draft.
Even post the trade, right? They were pretty adamant.
Trying to make sure that even John Lynch, I still believe in Jimmy. He said that the other day, right? So they've spent a lot of time on that. There's no question about it. Now, it would get difficult if you trade him. I would imagine the team that acquires him will have some access to his medical information, right? They'll want to do some evaluation of him, check out his thumb, his surgically or non-surgically repaired thumb. Did it require surgery? Oh, it didn't require surgery. Why didn't it require surgery? Can we see the x-rays, Don Yee? So, but the one thing about it is that Don Yee and Jimmy Garoppolo would have an incentive to cooperate in this theoretical lie because it helps them, right? It helps them make the case that Jimmy didn't struggle. My number one takeaway from this situation is that I think it's pretty impressive in some ways that we lasted this long in what was a really weird situation without things getting this weird. Whether it was a fake injury, as you have laid out the theory for, whether it was an injury that Don Yee and Jimmy Garoppolo didn't necessarily share with the 49ers up front because Kyle Shanahan says it's a sprain and then Rap Sheet says it's a fracture. And that's when Mayoko wrote on Twitter, like, things are curiouser and curiouser. That it's, I do wonder if the fact that John Lynch liked that tweet is a part of this whole play here, right? Now, it doesn't factor into your theory. It doesn't make sense to have this elaborate plan where you're trying to up his trade value and then have John Lynch like a tweet that says we hate him.
I have multiple theories, though. I have another one for you.
No, okay. But my point is the John Lynch thing. I would imagine Don Yee, whose star client is Tom Brady, has a long history of believing that, the star player or the quarterback should be treated a certain way and has certain rights that other players do not enjoy, right? And that liking a tweet that says you should leave your quarterback in Nashville is not appropriate. Accidental or not, I would imagine Don Yee was pissed when that happened. If I were Jimmy Garoppolo, even if I kind of bought John Lynch's scenario, even if I know John Lynch, I think John Lynch wouldn't do that. Guy Haberman, I don't think John Lynch would do that, but on purpose. But that would piss you off if you were that guy, wouldn't it? if you were that guy and you had to eventually, you're going to have to step behind the microphone and someone's going to ask you, what'd you think when John Lynch liked a tweet that said they should have left you in Nashville?
I don't know if Jimmy has a Twitter account, but I do think when you see that, it would really piss me off if John hadn't been tagged in it and like he was searching that stuff. It was clear he was tagged in that with like Mayoko and a couple other fan accounts that anyone that has Twitter knows that would just naturally come up on your scroll, and he's scrolling the mentions and see some stuff. So I think if you live in that world, which most players do have a Twitter account, I think it's kind of understandable. But like you said, the result is the result. And because my argument would be like, well, you played like shit, and two, they play you a premium to deal with the shit. But we are dealing with humans. Understandable for them to be really mad. Now, my pushback on the Brady thing is it wasn't really till his latter, like 40, 41 years old. Remember forever, there were countless articles of like from 25 to like his late 30s, he got treated just like everyone else, and that helped set the culture of their success. Like Brady was a huge part of playing into that. Now, he never had to deal with a like tweet from his head coach, but that was not nothing. I mean, that was clearly an accident. Like John Lynch, if he could do that over, would have avoided that at all costs because it made a story that didn't need to be there. But like I have a hard time, I get as a human being mad, but like I would get if you had won the game and you fucked up. It's like, fuck you guys, we still won the game, but like you lost,
Yeah, but but it's as simple as my boss shouldn't like a tweet like that. And it's not even about logic. Like, I think we get caught up in these arguments about humans in logic all the time. If I was Don Yee and I was Jimmy Garoppolo, I'd be pissed, period. And I just think it's pretty remarkable that this situation, as weird as it is, hasn't gotten this weird until now. And so my point in all of that is, if my thumb was hurt and I needed to get it medically examined, I might do it on my own, not with the 49ers. Right.
Yeah, then he's going a little NBA player-ish, which to me, I'd be out on him if I was the 49ers, and that would have led me to benching him.
Yeah, well, benching him, I mean, if he's hurt, I'm not benching him. He's already hurt.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, okay, good, Jimmy, stay away. We'll never see you again.
For sure.
And that's my second theory, which kind of leads into more, I think it's very plausible that tensions were very high after the game. And things got said. As you saw Jonathan Allen, did you see him justify the pain thing? He's like, brothers fight. Do any of you guys have brothers? And I actually think, listen, heat of the moment, those guys have probably known each other for how long? I mean, those guys might have known each other since they were like 16 years old, right? It's a pretty unique situation for something that looked a little crazy. He did put his finger in his face, but
to hit him on the side of the head.
To me, you poke like that, you get socked. That's it, or you have to be ready to get hit. But he is lucky that Jonathan Allen, who is like 320 pounds, did not connect to his face. I mean, that could have gone a full-on melee. I can imagine that things were said after that game because the tensions, what was on the line, how the game played out, everyone was edgy. The coach, the general manager, and the quarterback. Like, if you watch his press conference, he was kind of smiley. Like, I don't think Kyle was really smiley. So maybe some things get said. Not necessarily a fuck you, but you just leave that game thinking, screw these guys. And maybe Kyle leaves the game, fuck this guy.
Right.
And then your finger starts hurting. Then you realize, like, I'm kind of over this. Then, over the period of time when, I don't know if he went to Chicago, was with his family, what do you think the conversations were like? Jimmy, you've done so much for this. This organization sucks without you. They drafted this guy, and you keep carrying him. Who knows? That's how people talk, right? And then his finger starts hurting a little bit. Then the tweet happens, and everyone's kind of on edge. Kyle probably doesn't even care that much that the tweet's liked. John feels terrible. Jimmy goes double FU. He gets on the phone with old Yee, who has a bigger diva in Jimmy's situation than anything he's really had to deal with Tom, especially at the same age. And they just go, screw these guys. My finger hurts. Let's go get some x-rays. See, it's a little off. Then I don't really know what happened on Monday. Maybe Kyle didn't quite know what was going on. And then all of a sudden...
Which would be alarming.
But an NBA move would kind of be to double down. Like, yeah, I'll show up when I have to. And Monday was a glorified nothing day, right? So maybe Jimmy didn't show. Maybe who knows what was going on. Kyle's kind of out of the loop. And he's like, yeah, I think his fingers hurt. We don't quite know what the severity is. Then 20 minutes after that, people start tweeting while you and I are recording this emergency podcast. He's got like mallet finger of the thumb. We're like, what is going on here? It was. And then, like you said, Mayoko, an old school journo, was like, this is weird, because it was weird. And I think the weirdness goes back to Jimmy's camp. But so I think it's very plausible that he was benched. I also think it's very plausible that Jimmy was on edge after Kyle screamed at him. Then the like tweet happens, and then he kind of, essentially, if he can't throw, he can't throw. But
hold on, he's going to gut it out
on him.
Per reports.
Yeah, which felt a little propaganda-ish. The way
a little. Extremely propaganda-ish. And, it's something that makes you wonder if you're Kyle Shanahan, even if he can come out and throw the football well, you still don't necessarily want to play him. Just think about it in these basic terms. You show up for work on Monday and the quarterback's not there. And he doesn't have an advanced, you don't know why. You don't know all the details of why, or you find out the details after the fact, or you find out the details through the media. Like I'm not going to call it wild, but that's kind of crazy. If you're in the building, you go, where's our quarterback?
Again, guy, that does not really happen in the NFL. That is something that happens in the NBA, and the coaches and executives hate it, but they have to take it, right? Like when Kyrie's on your team, he dictates the term. In the NFL, even back to Brady, like it's a team thing. He's the leader of the building. It's like, where is so-and-so? It occasionally happens in the NFL, and it's a massive story. Like, so-and-so is missing. They don't know where he is. It's like the biggest story of the year. If you don't want that to get out, because it feels like your building's in shambles, but to me, I got this thing red flagged. I don't think I don't believe the words that came out from everyone yesterday. I don't know if I'm right, but I know there's more to the story, and it does not behoove the Niners to leak their side. Jimmy clearly is leaking his side, at least, from I'm injured, I can't play, but it is a bizarre situation.
It is. And it doesn't behoove the Niners to make it look bizarre either. It doesn't behoove them to make Jimmy look difficult or high maintenance.
But I do think the situation led to what we all wanted. I know speaking for myself personally, I didn't need to see Jimmy anymore. I've seen enough. Like, let's go. And I just talked to a guy at the gym today, a diehard season ticket holder since the Kezar days, who said, like, do you think Jimmy's done? I said, yeah, I don't think we are ever going to see Jimmy Garoppolo in a 49er uniform. Whether they play 2 more games, whether they make the playoffs play a 3rd game, it's Trey Lance's show moving on here. And I think everyone is ready for it. Let's go. And it might not go well. He could be terrible, but we're just ready for it. Well, I don't want Jimmy to get hurt. I would have rather, if he legitimately has a shattered thumb and he's out for 6 months or something, who knows? I'm not rooting for that. But I am rooting. Like, if you told me, before we ever heard of this story and we were thinking like this was going to be our first podcast of the week, if you said, John, you can sign up for 2 things: Jimmy Garoppolo to start against the Texans or Trey Lance to start against the Texans, I would have checked the Trey Lance box.
Yeah, well, I don't know who would. There's 5 people who would have checked the other box. So even people
but if my theory, my conspiracy theories, and just they're all out there, are off, and it's just as black and white as his thumb's fucked up. Maybe Kyle didn't have all the information. If he was 100% healthy, do you think Jimmy Garoppolo would have been the starter Sunday against the Texans? Would he have been out there at practice on Monday?
If he were healthy, he would have been at practice Monday.
Yeah, I guess he would have been at practice, but do you think he still would have been the starter after what happened on Thursday?
Oh, I'm inclined to believe he would have been the starter.
It is plausible, though, with the quote-unquote little mini bye whenever you have the Thursday to the following Sunday. He had been playing well in practice. It is understandable that maybe that was a time to transition after a game like that.
It could be all of that. He's been playing well in practice. Now, I don't know if you get Fred Warner in on it, but to say that to Mayoko could be timed as a way to say, if we lose a game, we're going to Trey Lance. And it's because Trey's gotten better, right? Not because Kyle changed his mind, not because Kyle's admitting that he was wrong, but because Trey Lance got better. You would want to lay the groundwork for that. You could make one like 3-week conspiracy theory and put the whole thing together.
Do you think it would be difficult to include Fred Warner in your orchestrated propaganda of Trey Lance balling?
Do he and Trey Lance have the same agent?
I don't think Don Yee represents Fred, would be my guess.
Donnie represents Trey.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, Trey Lance. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's possible.
You know, like when LeBron shows up at a college game of a kid who's going to sign with Rich,
Oh yeah.
that type deal.
Well, he's
When
always
LeBron
tweeting at the Ohio
tweets
State
like,
guys.
when LeBron tweets like, Osaka looking sick, and then it's like ding ding ding. Oh, she's about to debut something on LeBron's platform. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, how about these 3 wide receivers for Alabama, and then Clutch lands 2 of them.
Yeah,
Everything's orchestrated.
so you know, I don't know. I think there's a lot of legitimacy to these theories. I think if you take all of the theories away and go, the injury is one thing, and it sounds like it's different than what Kyle Shanahan said, that in and of itself is weird. Period. And I think it's a little impressive that we've gone this long before it got this weird.
Well, I think one thing that helps Shanahan and really John is they've been the opposite of the Balky administration, right? No leaking. They are not in the business. Like, Kyle does not give a shit whether the media likes him or not. And when I say that, I mean a lot of coaches do care about kind of sculpting the way their teams talked about. Like, Kyle's not really into that. So regardless of the theories, whether he's, truly shattered thumb or not, we just got to the right result. We ended up, hopefully, we're recording this on Tuesday. Jimmy just miraculously come back. I'm back. I'm good, actually. No fracture at UCLA. UCL. I'm good to go. But I think just Trey Lance for the next several weeks. And with the Saints losing, the Niners are in pretty good shape to make the playoffs.
All right, let's talk about Trey Lance then, and what he's going to look like. I say gonna because as we record this, we don't know if he's going to start. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, you know the answer to that question. But it would be surprising. I'd be surprised if Trey Lance is not the starting quarterback against the Texans. He's made one career start. He played another half against the Seattle Seahawks. And the question is all of this talk about him being better for the last month going to result in him being better on the field? What kind of game could he play from a number standpoint? And will it be better than what we've seen from him statistically so far this year, where he's been a 52% passer? In the game against Arizona, he was 15 of 29 for 192. Did not throw a touchdown, threw a pick. Also ran 16 times for over 5.5 yards per carry, 89 rushing yards. Against Seattle, he was similarly around 50%, 9 of 18, 157, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He rushed 7 times for 41 yards. Again, this time even better than the 5.6 yards per carry against Arizona. This was 5.9 yards per carry, although that game was first, I guess. I should have done them in reverse order. But anyway, so that's what he's been. What could he be in the game against the Texans, and what would we be looking for?
Well, the 15 to 29, which is basically 50%. I remember, a lot of people were like, well, there's some drops. There were some drops. There were also some remarkable catches, if I remember as well. I just think the accuracy, like, does he look more accurate? And part of being more accurate when you're a younger player, are you just more comfortable, right? Because the more comfortable you are, can he, have some changeup, right? Part of it was a lot of those balls felt like he was throwing 99-mile-an-hour heaters, and not every ball. And Herbert battles with this too. Like, not everything needs to be your hardest throw. It's easy, I think, sometimes, on a little wheel route or whatever. But what even about like an out route or a crossing route when the guy's not that far away from you? And to me, I'll just look immediately from just his poise. Does that lead to more natural throws? Like when we watched him, and again, it was a completely different universe playing Division I AA, but he was very comfortable playing. And part of the Arizona game, and I think we talked about this on the emergency podcast, at the time, they were the best team in the league. I mean, they were humming, they were kicking everyone's ass, and the defense was really good. I mean, it is good. They have really good players, right? Chandler Jones. They have several linebackers. They had Isaiah Simmons. That's one of the more physical collisions you'll see all season, right? The goal line of those two guys, given their size. We know how good Budda Baker is. Byron Murphy's a really good player.
I'm sorry, did you say JJ?
Was he hurt in that game? Did he get hurt in that game?
He might have gotten hurt in it, but he played in it.
Was that the first time they played him?
That was the first meeting. The second meeting was Colt McCoy.
Oh, you're right. You see, he definitely played in that game because he was working McGlinchey. Because I remember hearing John Lynch talk about it a couple weeks later that, like, yeah, McGlinchey had a rough game. And so that, you're right. So they had their defensive line was humming. Brandon Ayuk was nowhere near what he is now. So aren't they? And obviously Debo's in the peak of his powers. And you alerted
Kittle
me
didn't
to
play.
this. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that because he had got hurt the previous week. So you can't really complain about the weapons, right? A lot of teams in the league would sign up for the weapons they have. I think you just got to score. Wasn't the final score of that game 17-10? Can he lead just a couple touchdown drives? Whether he throws them, whether he runs them in, whether they hand it off, can they score points? That's ultimately the goal of this thing. And I don't think you can depend on your defense. Maybe you get a turnover, which they did in that game, remember? It could have been a huge turning point, and they couldn't turn it into any points. I would say 23-plus points you need to win the game. I don't think you can just be in the teens and feel. If I told you right now they score 18 points, do you feel great about them winning the football game?
No. The Texans are not the Cardinals on defense. The Texans won, though, last week with 10 starters out. 11 practice squad guys were activated, and they had a new kicker that they'd signed that week. But what happened against the Chargers was the Chargers looked bad. The Chargers committed 3 turnovers, including a pick six. And I think
six was at the end of the game, kind of.
Pick six was at the end of the game. But I think it's very simply 2 things. First of all, I think they'll score 21 points because I think if you look at what the Texans do, they give up scores on the ground. Niners love to run the football. I think we're looking at
Elijah Mitchell should be back this week.
Elijah Mitchell, who played in that first game. One thing we didn't get a lot of back when Trey played the first time was Deebo Samuel as a running back, although he did pitch the ball once to Deebo for a big gain, almost a touchdown. It looked like the classic Deebo play. It was like at the 25, he got down to the 2, running around left end, almost scored. And Trey actually, with Deebo in the backfield, had a big run that was negated by a penalty. I think we're looking at a much better game from Trey Lance. I think going back and watching that game today, he threw the ball downfield a lot. Some of it was on scramble. And I think it's interesting you bring up how hard he throws the ball. I think it's similar to Herbert in that it feels to me, watching Justin a lot and watching Trey again, that both of them throw their fastballs the hardest after they've extended plays. So it's not boom, boom, first read, throws it too hard, so much as it is gets out of the pocket and extends a play because they know the arm they have can make up for some of, for waiting a long time to throw the football. And then they really try to fire it in there. You're right. There were some great catches in that game. Ayuk only had 2, but he had 1 incredible catch by the sideline. Deebo had an incredible catch in that game. Mohamed Sanu, remember, had a drop on what would have been a big third down. I think it was like a 3rd and 15 or something. And that game started with to me, the Niners got down in that game because of 2 bad throws from Trey Lance. The interception on the first drive, which actually he did a great job getting out of the pocket. And then let's maybe not throw it to Travis Benjamin so much. And then on the play that you were talking about, where he got crunched at the goal line trying to run in after it was not a designed run on 4th down.
Was that on 4th and 1?
It was 4th and goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first down play you might remember on that drive was a quick pass to Deebo that was set up to maybe be a touchdown for Deebo. And Trey Lance, should have thrown it off Deebo's front right hip or maybe at his numbers and threw it down below his butt on the backside. He couldn't catch it. So that resulted in eventually a failed 4th down attempt and 3 points for Arizona. And they led 10-0. I think we're looking at a much improved Trey game against Houston. Okay. Partly because I don't think Houston's that good. I know Davis Mills has become hot. I'm pro Davis Mills. I know they beat the Chargers. The Chargers are untrustworthy. Not that the Niners are exactly trustworthy.
You retweeted that Davis Mills is going to be the best quarterback of this draft.
Oh, yeah, that was a fun tweet. That was Will Blackman's tweet from April. It was an April tweet from Will Blackman that I retweeted. Okay. I thought I wasn't saying necessarily that I agree, but just I was giving somebody some credit for being on Davis Mills early. That was from April. It made me laugh. Retweets are not necessarily endorsements. Neither are likes, John Lynch. In the words of John Lynch.
I might make that as my Twitter bio.
Yeah, I was thinking of changing it as well, but making it a quote, John Lynch. What do you think?
We've been efforting to have him on the podcast. And he said to me about probably a month and a half ago he would come on. He just doesn't really do that much in season besides what he's contractually obligated to. That's why I haven't taken any shots about his tweet on
smart.
online.
That's good.
But
It's we're very understanding of social media.
And
mistakes,
I agreed
but
with the like. I mean, I was pro. I agreed with the sentiment behind the tweet.
I think we're looking at can you do the math for me? I think we're looking at like because I think part of this is about the attempts. They got down in the Arizona game. He threw 29 passes. They were playing from behind. I think we're looking at like a 16 of 20 for 25 game. Okay. Well, what's the percentage
65.
on that? That's more efficient. I think we're looking at a touchdown throwing. I think we're looking at, let's just take his 2 games over 5 yards a carry. I don't think it's going to be 16 carries necessarily, but maybe we're looking at, 10 carries, 11 carries, 12 carries, somewhere in that range for 50 to 60 yards. I think he's going to play well, and I think they're going to win.
I think one thing that Jimmy did much better the year they were really good than he's done the last 2 years. It might just be the wear and tear. His ankles are giving out. I don't know. I mean, he's a weathered 30-year-old. Is he did not really extend plays beside kind of in the pocket. He was not a big scramble throw it guy, which, like you said, even Russell's off right now, but Russell is a king of, right, moving to the right, moving to the left, looking down, letting it rip. Deshaun, obviously Herbert, the Mahomes, they're king of keeping plays alive behind the line of scrimmage. They're eventually going to throw. That's what this guy can do. Now, I think his natural inclination is going to be go like that, to go deep. So can he hit some of those balls? And I think sometimes, like you said with the Herbert thing, Russell in the peak of his powers, it felt like 95% completion percentage when he got outside. He was going to let it rip. Deshaun Watson was really good at it. The completion percentage is really high for the Rodgers, really high. Are you going to be confident every time he does that? Because part of it is like, I'm really talented. I got a huge howitzer. Let's let it rip. Like, hey, 19-11. Hey, 85. Head toward the end zone, baby.
Hard of it.
That is where it's just
intercept.
Yeah, you get 30+ yards down the field. Sometimes the ball floats on you. Sometimes you underthrow. Sometimes the wide receiver and you see it a lot. It just, you guys aren't, like, one guy goes in, you think he's going out, or you think he's going right, he goes left. Remember the first game Odell Beckham played against the Niners? And Stafford's like, go! And all of a sudden, he goes the wrong way, and the ball just keeps going. It was Tart or Ward to just hit him like this.
Yeah.
And I don't blame Trey, but I think that's going to be a balancing act. It's one thing next year, week 3, you got a lot of season left. Let's just work some things out. They can't really afford in like a 14 game second half, like a big pick, right?
No, and I think
ultimately you have to win.
This game is like Tennessee in that sense. If you don't turn it over, the only way the Niners were going to lose the Titans game was to turn it over, and they did. That was the only way.
Twice.
One in the end zone, one in the baby zone, red area. So I think this is like that game. If you don't turn it over, and I also think Tennessee was a lesson in this, executing Kyle Shanahan's offense. You don't win a Super Bowl just executing the offense, but you beat teams that you should beat just executing the offense, right? When you get into the Super Bowl, when you get into these big moments, the playoff games, the best teams, now it's also about Patrick Mahomes, the players making plays beyond the X's and O's. But to beat the Titans, that Titans team, it was just about executing the offense. To beat this Texans team, it's just about when the play gets drawn up that has Debo 8 yards out, ready to walk in, just hit him between the numbers. Hit him between the numbers. That plus not turning it over beats the Texans. So it really is, I think it's that simple this week. And so that's where it's like the fun of Trey versus that's not what you need this week necessarily. Doesn't mean he may not bring it. But this is where I think Ayuk being more in rhythm probably than he was then. Debo definitely. Kittle coming off a 2-catch game. I would imagine George Kittle's going to get more than 3 targets this week. So that helps a massive amount. And this guy's played football, and he's been practicing. He's been with if sitting gets you anything, he's been doing a lot of good sitting since the last time he played.
What about, I would imagine early on in the season, a guy that he got to rep a lot with, now he probably hasn't seen in the last month, would be Juwan Jennings. Could be a sneaky Juwan Jennings, like 5-6 target game, a little action. You have a rapport with him.
Yeah,
you saw him for a while, in practice until they stole him away from you once a couple injuries happened.
Yeah, just less Travis Benjamin, I'd say.
Yeah, let's just leave Travis Benjamin on the sideline in street clothes. Because I think it's hard for Kyle. Like, he sees him, he's like, throw him in. It's like, Kyle, has this guy made a play in 5 years? Like, you have, two of the best players in the league. Just go 25 targets to 19 and 85. 0 targets to the other guy. We get a lot of DMs about the game last week. It's still like a kind of a hot topic. Every time I think it was 16 targets A.J. Brown got, they could have easily given him 25, and they would have won by more than 3. Like, the Niners benefited, and I don't know why coordinators do this. Like, we got to mix in a good outside zone here on 2nd and 5. No, you don't. Throw it to 11, because every time they drop back, it's like, oh my God. Luckily, A.J. Brown does not play for the Houston Texans, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Who do they have? Like Brandon Cooks?
Well, Brandon Cooks didn't play last week. COVID protocols.
If he's healthy, not a great matchup for the Niners guys, right?
No, it's not. But again, like you're not going to win every game with a shutout. Like they didn't for all that A.J. Brown did. How many points did the Titans score?
He had 1 touchdown. Now, one element that what didn't he have like 6 first third downs, or you said 7? I mean,
they were incredible on third down. Yeah, they were.
But him specifically, I think 7 of his like 11 catches were third downs.
Wow. Texans been really good on third down the last 2 weeks against bad third down teams.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing Rex Burkhead get loose, but
again,
it's just me. Again, yeah.
Now he's at the top of the scouting report.
I thought Rex Burkhead, and I'm sure he thought, like, this is my last like little $5 million signing from my guy Caserio, You see Matt Flynn, someone, he tweeted last night, like, someone should have given me a call, and someone tweeted at him, like, you remember when Seattle wasted all that money on you? And then his reply was like, hell yes, that was awesome.
Yeah, I do. That was really good. I think this leads us to another question, which is Kyle Shanahan ready for Trey Lance? Is he ready to call plays for Trey Lance? Last we heard Kyle Shanahan analyzing his time with Trey Lance. He said it was hard for him, and he underestimated how hard it would be for him, right, to mix Trey in and call an offense for Trey Lance when the defense is playing defense differently for 2 different quarterbacks. So has Kyle figured things out since then?
Well, I mean, I just think it's going to be much easier to run the plays that he wants to run with a guy that has a better understanding of what they're doing, because we talked about this years ago, and we have a lot of new listeners since then. Because, I mean, a hot topic those first couple of weeks when Jimmy Garoppolo got traded, like, he doesn't know the offense. It's not fair. And we kept going back to Matt Ryan saying, like, it took him a year to learn the offense, right? And they had to spend the summer getting on the same page. It is a complicated offense, right? I mean, the guys talk about it around the league. If you're still bullish on the Rams and McVay only scratching the surface, that would be the pushback, right? They are going to be dramatically better next season running the offense. He was a guy from a smaller school. I mean, I understand they ran a pro-style offense and he was used to being under center, but it's a pretty big, I would say, jump going from whatever his offensive coordinator was at North Dakota State. And I'm not trying to talk shit about those guys at all. They kick ass. They take names. They win national championship after national championship. But going to Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers, and the verbiage of the offense, even if he's repping all the team reps with a scout team and not Jimmy, like you said on the emergency pod, he's still the backup quarterback, so he's still getting the game plan in a 3-ring binder and on his iPad. And he's still every single day of the week sitting there with McDaniel, with Shanahan, with the receivers in the meetings, right? Going over the verbiage, the plans, what's expected on every play from the previous week to what's being installed. Like, he's sitting right there. Now, probably separated, some distance or whatever. You watch the Colts Hard Knocks. They had their team meeting in the bubble.
What do you mean the bubble? Like there's an outdoor bubble?
Yeah, I think they have a practice bubble and they put all the chairs. Is what it looks like. But there's just an element of he has to dramatically know more than he did 2 months ago of what's expected in this offense and how the offense operates. Because for the most part, the last couple months, they run like we all say all the time. They're not running trick plays. Like they run variations of the same plays over and over. They work. They have really good players, and the play caller is really good at the timing of the given plays. But wouldn't you say most week in, week out? I guess they've added the Debo at running back element, but their plays have been very similar over the last Kyle Shanahan era of what they look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that. I mean, I'm not diminishing its complications, but ultimately, week in, week out, they run a base set of plays and formations. And they really have the Shanahan's entire lives, right?
I wonder.
His offense. I remember being with the Eagles and we played the Houston Texans with him and Kubiak. Now, they were much more consistent running just like outside zone. I would say the 49ers run a little less of the true just outside zone. Peyton Manning used to do this, right? You run as fast as you can as the quarterback and you hand it off and the guy goes. And then you can also cut it back. The Niners haven't run that play as much as like they run the toss play. And now they run to Debo. Someone's going to get killed. But hopefully, I mean, I would not let Debo run that play.
Well, I do wonder if when Kyle was on the plane from the Justin Fields Pro Day, drawing up plays for Trey Lance, if he was drawing up Trey Lance, Debo Samuel run plays. I wouldn't imagine he was drawing up that many. I don't think he expected to have to use Debo Samuel as a running back as much as he had this year. And I wonder if in the last month he has added some of that to what he would do, because he's added it to the game plan for Jimmy Garoppolo. So, of course, he's added it to the game plan for Trey Lance.
Isn't that kind of collegiate, like something you would see at Ohio State or at Florida or at Alabama when they just have a remarkable running quarterback and just a remarkable, like a Jalen Waddle.
Two of them, yeah.
Or like Justin Fields and, Olave. You would make some unique plays for those two guys, right? Maybe an option. Who knows? How would you not have thought about that over the last month or two?
Ideally, you don't have to do it, but Kyle, I think, deserves a lot of credit for finding ways to get his best. But what do every offensive coordinator you've ever worked with heard talk at a press conference? They all say the same thing. Just got to get the ball to our playmakers in space, help our playmakers in a position to make plays, get our playmakers the ball. So Kyle's done that with Debo. So this is better with Trey Lance running some of those plays because you don't have to give it to Debo every time. And I think ideally what it creates for Trey is some runs, because I think we'd agree a lot of the runs that he had by design were high contact runs. I mean, 4th down runs up the gut, they had a 3rd and 8 where they ran it with him and then ran it again with him on 4th and 2, and they didn't pick up the first down.
Remember, he was injured after the game, was not available the next couple of weeks.
The knee.
So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I mean, he hasn't even officially been named the starter, which I expect. Well, the Niners don't leak to Schefter, but they'll just announce he's the starting.
Well, I think we'll get some information Wednesday, right? If Garoppolo's out there practicing.
That's what I mean. Or just Trey Lance can be a starter. Trey Lance will talk to the media, because part of it has always been early on, we're like, could Trey start? But Jimmy would always talk to the media because the starting quarterback has to talk on Wednesdays. Is that big picture? Can he just have back-to-back healthy games? Because he had made one start, and he was. If he was the starter, he would not have been available the following week.
Right.
That feels like a lifetime ago, but that did happen. But a little like Jimmy, he just looked fine after the game, and then it was just an injury that kind of popped up.
There's been a lot of theories about quarterback injuries this year.
I got to go back and watch. He's not a big slider, right?
No.
I mean, that's not really. He's a Ricky Henderson diver.
Yeah, and he's not, I think one of the questions with him is just, has he gotten a little more decisive in the run game? Did the experience of playing NFL football, help him in terms of, I think you and I both felt that he felt a little uncomfortable in the run game initially, but he hasn't had that many opportunities. I mean, what are we talking about? 20 carries around then, maybe a little more in his career. So
I would imagine, and I don't even know if this is the right way to describe it, but an insecurity, a level of confidence that just, it's impossible for it to be there, right? You just kind of feeling yourself out, right? You just feel yourself out, and then you're like, okay, I can do this. And then you're like, I think I can run this guy over, and then you don't. You're like, yeah, I probably need to avoid that. I mean, there's a balancing act of, or maybe it's just as simple as well, you got to pick your spots. If you see Ambry Thomas there, run him over. If you see Isaiah Simmons, who was the 7th pick in the draft and is 6'4", 240 pounds, who runs a 4.4, who beat ETN in a race, he might beat you to the spot. It's just part of it is there had to be a lot going on, right? In a couple years, you'll have scouting reports when I see Budda Baker there, or when I see Jalen Ramsey there, or when I see X player there. He just sees probably players, the game plan, And it might be like that. I mean, it's going to be like that this week. There's just any time like you're starting for the first time, you're seeing players. Also, when you did not play Division I football, most of these guys like you've never played against. There is an element. How many players do you think like Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Najee Harris, Nick Bosa, over their careers in their rookie year, just like, oh, I played against those 7 guys, right? Every week. You know, I was like, oh, I know these 6 guys when I go across the field after the game. Or just the basic thing, like when you get the game plan, like, hey, this is your offensive tackle. You're like, oh, I played this guy 3 years at Iowa. Like, they're just,
well, how about how about the two football teamers, Jonathan Allen and what's his name?
They're literally teammates. Remember
when
when Crosby, who'd they play? Some backup tackle ended up, and it was Crosby's teammate at like Western Michigan. Remember that? Or Central Michigan?
Oh, yeah.
I forget.
Yes, I do remember that. Well, the other day we did have Dylan Radin start an NFL game. Was that Sunday Night Football? The former North Dakota. It was like he played with Trey Lance. But yeah, it was West. It was.
Well, but his school has produced NFL players. I just don't know how many NFL players they play on their schedule every year, right? He'll be like, oh, those were my teammates from North Dakota State, the 3 practice squad guys, and the 2 guys playing in the league. But like, does South Dakota State, does UC Davis, does Weber State, you know, to me, that's the biggest difference when you just play in the SEC for 3 years. I mean, can you imagine the amount of NFL players, if you're just a starting SEC player for multiple years, the amount of NFL players that you see once you get to the NFL on a weekly game plan?
Well, I mean, it's, you know, the best players play on the best teams. Those teams win national championships. The best players then go to the NFL. Brian on YouTube says, you guys do a really good job of talking about the potential negative situations with Trey and don't really spend time on how potentially good he can be. There's both, that's a misconception, a falsity. It's untrue. And it annoys me. It actually annoys me a lot. Someone who 20 minutes ago just gave my line on how good I think he's going to be. But if you haven't noticed, most rookie quarterbacks don't come out birthing looking like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson MVP, or Tom Brady. Like, it's hard. There's a lot they have to work through. Yeah, but fully birthed. Like, there is a lot to overcome. And I think part of being a young quarterback in the league is actually about avoiding the mistakes and getting an opportunity to build on the positives and then getting a little more confident and getting a little more confident. That's what it's about today. That's what we're talking about today. We're not talking about Trey Lance 3 years from now. We're talking about Trey Lance today, this week. A guy who's been again, I'm going to say this in a negative way, but he's been a 52% passer. So what is this about? It's about let's get to 60. Let's get to 58, right? Let's not throw the turnover on the first possession and then the team's playing from behind. These are basic things. But we talk about this with all the quarterbacks. That's it. Like when you talk about a lot of games, guess what? You don't say if Tom Brady can just go out and throw for 350. No, it's like, can Matt Stafford not throw 3 interceptable balls today? That's going to go a long way to winning the football game. So a lot of it with young players is about minimizing mistakes and then taking advantage of the good opportunities they have. And I think on a fundamental level, this Niners run game is better than it was when Trey Lance last played. Part of the reason it's gotten better is that George Kittle is back and healthy, right? I think Kyle Shanahan is in a much better rhythm for whatever reason, whether it's Ayuk is in a rhythm, whether it's Kyle was bad and now Kyle is good, whether it's they found other ways to use Debo, whether it's Kittle is healthy. But their offense from a play calling standpoint, I think you'd agree, is in a much better rhythm now than it was at the beginning of the year, even with Jimmy.
Facts.
So I think Trey's walking into a better situation than he was in when the year started, when he played against Arizona. On a simple level, he has practiced with the 49ers more today than he did back when he made his first career start. So he should be naturally better in that regard. And I think to a little bit of a degree, I think Kyle was covering a little bit when he said it was hard to call offense. I think part of the reason it was hard is that he didn't quite know what to trust with his quarterback, right? He didn't really have a lot of body of work to know, here's all the things I can do with Trey. We know that Kyle, you have to earn his trust, and you can lose it real quick as a quarterback. He will kneel on the football with 48 seconds left in the half like that. And so I think he's got to have a better feel. Now, Kyle, I think it's on Kyle to have used, because his backup quarterback is Trey Lance. Like, here we are now at the end of December. We can't get to the post-game press conference with Kyle saying, I don't have a great feel with how to call plays for him. Like, This is part of, he's been your backup quarterback, not your third stringer. So this has to have been part of figuring this out, is being ready for this situation.
I just think, Guy, experience matters. Whether you're doing this podcast, we've been doing this thing now 6 years. Whether you're a starting wide receiver, Deebo Samuel started for 4 years in the SEC. Now, he missed time because of injuries, but he was a senior. And then he got to the league, and by about midseason on a Super Bowl team, he was kicking ass and taking names. Ayuk didn't have as much experience. Really just got to shine for one season in a bad Pac-12. It's taking him some time, right? Kittle is a good example. Fucking fifth-year senior at Iowa, right? When he got to the NFL, he immediately could block. And then they figured out how to use him as he could just play. And Trey Lance, of all the players that we've ever seen get drafted that high, probably is one of the most unique backgrounds we've ever seen. Given the level of comp and given because of COVID, his season was canceled. And then he was only really there 2 seasons, and one of them he redshirted. Because it turns out they have the Alabama of D1AA, and they had an NFL quarterback. So he didn't even play, right? I mean, it's a little Trubisky-ish. But even Mitch, he was at North Carolina for 3 years. Now he redshirted, backed up, and then he got to start. But it's an extra year longer than Trey. Trey missed a season. The season did not happen. So then he gets to the NFL, and you're just already behind the 8 ball of just reps. If anyone that knows a football coach, whether it's in high school, college, or the pros, the word reps gets used over and over. And when I got into this business with you, you talk about reps in media stuff. But it's no different when I scouted. You get better the more reps you have writing up players. You get better selling. If you're a car salesman, the more cars you sell, the more reps you get. Reps matter in every aspect of life. It's a fact. It's not even debatable. It doesn't mean that early on, before your reps get to 10,000 hours or whatever, you can't have success.
Right. But
you tend to be an outlier, especially in higher level industries, higher level competition, right? It's just a fact. And so there's nothing wrong to be like, this guy's going to need some time. Hell, I was texting with an NFL exec the other day talking about Herbert, and his comment was the guy just needs some reps. The more NFL reps you get. At this point in time now, think of the reps Mahomes has relative to Herbert. This is 4th year as a starter, right? At the highest level. They've been kicking ass and taking names from day one. Every rep he's had. We talk a lot about Stafford. His reps have kind of been the opposite. None of them have mattered. When's the last time Mahomes has had a rep in a game that did not matter? Has it happened?
Well, I mean, his week 17 rep mattered, right? When he was Alex Smith's backup and played in a game that didn't matter, but the reps mattered, right?
But once he became the starter, has he really taken a snap that didn't matter? Because even in some of the random games they played as the game's gone on, they've been the hunted, though.
Yeah. I mean, he's played some snaps they didn't matter.
No, I'm not saying he's perfect. But my point is, legitimately, of the 16 games for 3 straight years, 80% of them were just big games, right? Yeah. I mean, every time that he doesn't play a shitty team, the game matters because the team's trying to beat him. They play on prime time. But Lamar, they just have a ton of reps. And those guys already had a lot of reps playing in college. And you just improve. Patrick Mahomes now is better than the Patrick Mahomes that won the MVP. That's a fact. He just understands more football. And he's going to be better in 2 or 3 years. No different than Aaron Rodgers is better at playing NFL football. Tom Brady talks about all the time. Football's easier now than it was 15 years ago. 15 years ago, he's the 07 Pats quarterback. One of the greatest teams we've ever seen. So so part of it is just unknown. In the scouting world, people get very nervous with 1-year starters, even if the 1 year their tape is worthy of a top 15 pick. Because you're just well, is this? That's where it is easier with a Herbert who has 4 years, right? Or a guy I think Kenny Pickett's been starting for a long time. Guys that have a large body of work. But the reps. I was watching last night, Ian Book against Miami. And Ian Book, I didn't realize this. Maybe I did, but I definitely forgotten that he's from Sacramento, Oak Ridge. And obviously he went to Notre Dame, was a several-year starter there. And he's an athletic guy. He ran a 4.6. And I looked up his Notre Dame stat page. He had ran for 17 touchdowns in college. Now, obviously, I'm sure if we went back and did a highlight pick. Like, not all of those. Some were probably quarterback sneaks, but I would imagine some of them were 10, 20-yard runs, right? He is an athletic guy. And there were several times last night where I think he's used to kind of running and probably being, even at Notre Dame, and they play a big-time schedule, being one of the better athletes on the field, probably every team they played besides like Alabama. And Christian Wilkinson, who's from Clemson, who's was a former first-round pick of Miami, a couple times he tried to run away, and it was clear, like, I don't think you're faster than this guy. And once the linebackers got in space, it was like, bro, you cannot – and I don't even blame him, but the speed of the game is in a different world. And this guy played at Notre Dame, who made the playoffs multiple times when he was the starting quarterback. Now do Trey Lance, North Dakota State, playing Weber State. Even if he's going to be an all-time really good player for the next decade, it's a learning process. The Arizona game was a learning process. He's lucky. His one game, to me, came against, at the time, a big-time powerhouse defense. And they still are. I mean, he went against a really good defense. Like, his one rep was not against the Jags, right, or the Chargers. It was against a team that athletes everywhere. Yeah. And I would say he had one of the moments that really stand out of the season, right? That goal line collision where he lost.
Where it looked like he was absolutely going to score. If you go back and watch it, it looked, of course he's going to score. He's going to walk in.
Do you think he's ever lost that collision in his life?
No.
Can't have.
I don't think he's ever. I would imagine if we stopped all the film in the moment where he's almost going to score, he's never gotten met at the goal line like he did. It was wide open. He was going to score, and then it just closed. It was over. There's a moment in Monday Night Football where Ian Book's racing out of the pocket, and Steve Levy's like, Ian Book, don't forget, he's a good athlete. And he just immediately goes from good athlete to swallowed up because it's a lot faster in the NFL. He's a good athlete in college. He's a good athlete, period. Humanity. He's probably a plus athlete among quarterbacks, but quarterbacks that are of his athletic ability know they can't get away when they've been in the league.
And part of it, in the way the game is built now and the athletes and the way they train now, it's a much faster game. Like defensive tackles that have come into the league the last 4 or 5 years run 4.6s, like the guy, the middle linebacker that runs five flat doesn't exist. The linebackers run 4.5. The nickel corners run 4.4. Some of the defensive ends run 4.5. Like that. Those are just the athletes now. So it's just, there's a speed element to the game of football that is just, you could say it's softer now than it was, for sure. I mean, just because they've led, it has never been faster, though. It has never been faster.
John, another piece of news as we're talking here that we can react to. It looks like Trey Lance is all the more in line to be the 49ers starter. Aaron Wilson tweeting, Tyler Bray, Colby Wadman, and James Smith worked out for the 49ers. Now, that would seem to indicate that they're going to need another quarterback on the roster. I can confirm that we know that Tyler Bray is an NFL quarterback.
I bullshitted with him like a couple months ago.
I know. Did you see him at a
party
concert?
Yeah. John Party. Jones
and he was the backup. He was the third stringer for the Bears last year. Colby Wadman, UC Davis, Thousand Oaks, California. That's where he went to high school. And not a lot in terms of his NFL career, waived by the Broncos April of 2020. And then James Smith, I'm not going to lie, I'm not even trying to be funny. I'm not positive is a quarterback. I need some help. Usually Google comes through in the clutch. But all the James Smiths I'm finding are this one's a defensive end. We've got another one that's a receiver. Here's one from Cincinnati. That's a punter.
Looks like a Kyle guy.
That was a punter. That makes sense.
Mitch is out. COVID.
Okay, yeah. So Aaron Wilson was also tweeting about a punter. All right. Well, that was confusing. But Colby Wadman and Tyler Bray are quarterback.
Well, the one thing I would say is it could be for Jimmy's injury. It also could be as simple as you just need to start working out some guys because Jimmy is not going to be on the team and you're going to need some quarterbacks in the offseason. So you just, part of this next couple weeks for some teams is you just want to have some guys to sign immediately after the season just that you have on your roster. So when you come back for OTAs that, guys maybe you have liked. Now, this one feels a little bit like they could get into a pinch really fast if something happened to Trey, right? And you went to Sudfeld, like, who's your other quarterback? They don't have one. And Josh Rosen, I don't think is available because he's on the he's on the Atlanta real roster. So he would be a guy that to me you would bring back because he knows the playbook, right?
Razor Ramen all over it. Colby Wadman is a punter. Okay, Wadman's a punter too. I wish Aaron hadn't put the quarterback in with the two punters. Threw me off, so I apologize. So Bray is Tyler Bray's still a quarterback, right?
Yeah, Rosen's on the Falcons. Tyler Bray's a quarterback. The guy looked like a punter, but you said he was a quarterback, so I just went with it. I would have felt like if UC Davis had a quarterback that was a fringe NFL guy, we would have heard about him. But they had a good team, so I don't know.
I would have failed this part of the SATs where they throw in the quarterback to make you think the other two are quarterbacks. So, but I would say this, Tyler Bray being worked out by the 49ers is an indication that they think they might need another quarterback this week.
Bye-bye,
unless
Jimmy.
there's another punter named Tyler Bray.
No, I think Tyler Bray is the former kid from the Valley who went to Tennessee with Lane Kiffin, who then Lane left and went on to start several years in the SEC. Loved by Andy Reid and Matt Nagy. Somehow has like a 7-year NFL career. I don't think he's made many starts either, but he's played in the NFL for a long time.
13, 14, 15, 16, that's 4. 17, 18, 19, 20, that's 8, plus this year. So he's appearing in his 9th year in the NFL.
Now, some of those are practice squad years, but when you introduce yourself, and I told him this, I'm like, bro, your greatest asset, whenever you introduce someone, I played in the NFL for, 9 years. Like that is, it's not, I got a training camp. 8, 9 years? Like who'd you play for? Oh, the Chiefs and the Bears? You mean, was Andy there? Yeah, Andy was there the whole time. I was Alex Smith's backup 1 year.
Has to be incredible to be 8 years in the league, 6 pass attempts. That can't have been done many times.
Well, the practice squad rules were changed mid-career that probably extended a guy like him, which he should be very grateful for because when I first got to the league, guys like that had 2-year careers.
Right. You can't.
He led an underrated football life from a little town in the Valley to go multiple years starting at the SEC at Tennessee. And then
he was a big deal. I remember when he came out. When he went to Tennessee, it was a big deal. Kingsburg. Because he was a big prospect, a big guy.
Yeah, he had a couple. I remember vividly one like historic win he had. I don't think their teams were that great, but it was like an overtime game, CBS, and he threw a touchdown. He probably had some pretty cool moments
like
in
Florida or something.
Yeah.
An update on what the Raiders could face this week, John, with Carson Wentz in COVID protocols. However, Adam Schefter reports the NFL and the NFLPA are close to adopting a new CDC guideline that would reduce quarantine time to 5 days from 10 days for all players, including those who are unvaccinated, which does apply to Wentz. Agreement could be done today per sources. So I guess if he tested negative Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Tuesday.
Well, today's Tuesday. Didn't he test positive today or did he test positive yesterday?
Yeah, I don't know.
He could play, I think, is the point, right?
Would you be shocked if in a couple days that they have the rule where if you test twice in 24 hours, unvaccinated or vaccinated, you're in? To me, that feels like that's coming.
No, I would not be shocked at all.
I would expect Carson Wentz to play Sunday.
In a game, they need him to.
I think the Raiders are going to freak when that happens.
That the rules happen to change. I suggested they change the NFL trade deadline so that you can do trades now, and the Colts could then get Nick Foles, and everyone's like, Nick Foles, how about Jimmy Garoppolo? And Raider fans, I got a bunch of Raider replies who are like, of course this would happen to us. Yep. The Raiders, I think no team has benefited more from pass interference calls than the Raiders, according to Josh Dubow. It must be road games where they're wearing their white jerseys. Everyone tells me they get penalized all the time, but
I had the thought today because I've been on a kick just ripping on Brandon Staley because I think he gets way too much love. When the media loves you that much, I have to nitpick you. And then when you tweeted out that he has the 32nd ranked, guy, he's Mike Nolan this year. They're that bad on defense. They allow the second most points in the league. The only team that allows more points is the Jets, who I think have the worst defense in the history of the Jets this year under Robert Saleh. That's Brandon Staley. And he has nothing to do with Justin Herbert because he's the defensive coordinator. So I give him no credit for his quarterback, who's having a worse year than he had last year. But, regardless, they are a quarterback-led team that their head coach has nothing to do with, that the media fucking adores, who sucks. What he's doing is just like I saw Jerry Jones give Mike a lot of credit today. In fairness to Mike, like he can just claim that he oversees it all, right? It's like I'm everywhere, right? I know Brandon. I watch the games. He's calling the plays on defense, and his defense stinks. And if you want to tell me, well, they don't have, what do you mean? They have like 7 top 50 draft picks on defense. He doesn't get to coach this year, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. He's got to make some random guys improve, and it's just not working out. I think he is. Did we talk about he made a comment the other day, a couple weeks ago, about Joey Bosa, who, kind of like Nick, got dinged. So he goes, to the independent neurologist, and they clear him. And he didn't put him back in the game. And they lost. That was a game they lost to like the Bengals. And he comes after the game. He says, as long as I'm the head coach here, we will lean being cautious. It's like, well, he was cleared. Like it happened to Nick, right? He got cleared. You put him back in the game. He acted like concussions meant more to him. It's like, that is such a comment. You just lost. And it's just, the guy's such a fraud, man. I don't mean necessarily exact. I think he's an okay coach or whatever, but his comments and the media just ate it up like this guy. So you're telling me Brandon Staley cares more about concussions and the health of his players than every coach in the league history? Because that's what he just said. It's just as he lost, and then he keeps losing. He just keeps losing defensively. They just ran for 200 yards against him. Like they have right now the same record as the Las Vegas Raiders. How is that possible? Every single person I know in the NFL, every single one, and I know several that are on the best team in the league in Kansas City or the best team in the AFC, they love Justin Herbert. You and I are not alone. The Justin Herbert bandwagon guy in the league is long, and that's his quarterback. And their team has the same record as the Raiders. I had the thought in the shower before we hopped on, are they one of the more, and their record's not terrible, it's 8-7, are they one of the more underachieving teams in the league? Shouldn't they be like a 11, 12-win team right now?
Well, they went 7-9 last year, and they changed coaches because that wasn't good enough. And it wasn't Herbert that was the problem. Now, they did look different, even though it's one game different. I watched them a lot last year. I've watched them a lot this year. The game management stuff was bad.
They had special teams issues too, remember?
But, that's right. But Anthony Lynn was .531 in 4 years, winning percentage as the head coach, right? If they don't win out, their record's not going to be that far off from last year's record.
They do get the Broncos and the Raiders the last 2 weeks, so I mean it's conceivable they go 10-7.
We got to beat them, but who knows? I mean, who knows? Who's to say who's going to be on the team on Sunday? I don't know. They just have not built themselves at all any sort of cushion.
To me, if they miss the playoffs, that's one of the big. Like if the Ravens miss the playoffs, Harbaugh will be like, "Yeah, we had 75 million injuries. Yeah, I went for 2 a couple times." Because Brandon Staley will be like, "Yeah, I went for 2 a couple times." No, bro, you gave up rushing yards to literally every running back you played. He had career days. You could not stop a nosebleed, and you had Justin Herbert. Because even Harbaugh would be like, "Yeah, Lamar Jackson disappeared. I don't know, multiple times during the season." Last time I checked, Herbert hasn't missed a game. If they lose one of these last 2 games, the Raiders or the Broncos, and miss the playoffs, to me, that's one of the bigger head scratchers of the year. Especially at a 17 now.
Well, absolutely. Because are they
in the playoffs right now?
I think that they aren't. Actually, I don't know. You have to look.
I'm looking up right now.
Especially because last year they made a statement when they fired a 7-9 coach who had a great rookie quarterback and said, this is not good enough. Just being
they are not because the Dolphins jumped them.
Yeah, the AFC is just
and the Ravens are ahead of them,
like you can in the NFC. In the NFC, you can screw around a little bit. You cannot in the AFC.
Honestly, if the Dolphins, the Chargers are no lock to even if they win out to make the playoffs.
Tua better than Herbert? A question has to be asked.
Do you think Flores would like a redo?
You know what's yes.
But my pushback on that is like, so would Ron Rivera. Do you think Herbert gets past number 2? Because he doesn't. Because remember, Ron took Chase. Ron would be like, yeah, we'll take Justin Herbert. Tell me when that redo draft is. I'll drive right there.
Just to be like, no, I'm good here. I'm good here at SoFi. Instead of playing for the football team without a logo. Today's the first day you can start talking to other teams' coaches. And according to Aaron Wilson, the Raiders are expected to look at multiple head coaching candidates, including Todd Bowles, Leslie Frazier, Gus Bradley, and Rich Bisaccia, according to league sources. We also saw a couple of those names and Doug Peterson connected to the Jags job, where GM Trent Baalke has a coach to hire. But what do you think of this Raider list?
Well, there's no offensive guys on that list, right? Defensive coordinator, their own defensive coordinator, and their current interim coach who's a special teams coach. That a little weird to you? Does that feel kind of Mayocky?
It feels like a made-up list to me. I mean, it's, I don't think it means a whole lot of anything. It's the first day of, I think it's let's talk to the people that somebody knows or that we know. I don't think that's anything close to the complete list. You know what I mean? If you told me those guys share the same agent plus Rich, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Do you feel confident that Mike Mayock is going to be the guy picking the coach?
Well, I'll tell you this. If one of these guys were to be hired, I would say Mike Mayock's still the GM.
I agree.
Like Todd Bowles isn't bringing his own GM.
I just... Are they really going to hire one of these? And retread's not a fair word because, Andy Reid, Bill Belichick are retreads, right? Pete Carroll's a retread. But these guys feel a little bit different than Andy Reid and Pete Carroll. I don't know. Gus Bradley, we saw it. Gus Bradley's a number 2. I was around Todd Bowles for a year. Do you know the best part about being a number 2 in the NFL guy? Being a coordinator, especially one of the good ones? You make $3 million a year. And you just have to do one press conference. You have to deal with a lot of bullshit. There's nothing wrong with being... I would get way back in the day when you make way less money. You make so much cash now. Gus Bradley's probably making $2.5 million. Todd Bowles probably the highest paid defensive coordinator in the league. Arians gets to deal with all the bullshit. His defense just kicks ass. Gets to live in Florida, no state income tax. Be a head coach, and then I get you would double your money. I'm not an idiot, but... It's not like you're leaving a high-paying job with a lot less stress. Coach of the Raiders?
You have to be a head coach, though, and it pays a lot more.
No, I know. I'm not an idiot. I get that, but
because guess what happens when you fail as head coach?
I'm also
you go back to being a coordinator is the answer. You just go back to being a coordinator and making that money again.
Don't love hiring defensive guys in this modern-day league. The Raiders' defense is fine. Just keep Gus and hire an offensive coach. You're not going to
Doug Peterson? Gus getting hired by somebody else? That would be part of my calculation, right? Because if Gus becomes the head coach and he hires a good offensive coordinator, that guy's the head coach in the next 2 years, if not 1 year.
I just think defense is not really a problem anymore, right? Their defense is fine. I watch them think they're a defensive team kind of now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think organizational just normalness is the number one issue. So I would lean somebody who's has some idea what to do, but
they felt, but they have a grown up running the team right now, and it's felt pretty normal given the circumstances, right? Rich is clearly a grown up. He's a
clearly
legitimate NFL.
But he's not going to be their next head coach.
No, he's not. Unless it's the Jimmy Garoppolo scenario where they win the Super Bowl. Mark would have no choice.
I would
even
support
then, it's
that.
we're just gonna still just look around.
But you know what? You raised it. We're kind of kidding. But what if they make the playoffs and win a playoff game? What if they win 2 playoff games? Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I declared them playoff dead before Thanksgiving. So but it doesn't. Does he have to go to the Super Bowl to get hired? I don't think so.
No,
I don't think we can underestimate Mayock being around Mark Davis every day in this current situation and then maybe becoming the GM. And the same applies to Rich Bisaccia. Now, we had the report that Mark was going to blow the whole thing up, but it's been a roller coaster of a year.
They've had a couple, saving wins. Obviously, the Cowboy game and the Denver game, which were, could have gone either way. And they found a way to win it.
Would you be surprised if they hired somebody off of this list? I would be. But then again, there's something to be said. The Raiders historically, they know Gus Bradley. They know Rich Bisaccia. I don't think we should be shocked.
I would not expect them to hire those guys. But I don't have a great feel for who they're going to hire at all.
Yeah. Yeah. My first reaction was the same. But then I look at it and I go, I don't know. Maybe they would.
I would say if it comes out, the Raiders tweet out after the season, we are going to retain Mike Mayock as the general manager, and Mike Mayock is going to lead with Mark Davis Mike Mayock's going to be Mark Davis's point guy on the coaching search. I would say I wouldn't be shocked if like Leslie Frazier or Todd Bowles is hired. Those are old school defensive guys. Mike Mayock played defense. He's a Belichick tough guy. Mike Mayock feels like he would hire defense, not like, Kellen Moore. Like, I would be shocked if Kellen Moore is Mike Mayock's hire, right? I would expect defense or a special teams guy.
Well, I think here's the other thing you have to think about. You just made me think of this. Is like normally the offensive guys are more in demand right now, right?
Yeah, Kellen Moore, Daboll, Leftwich.
Like or at least they're maybe more demand is not the word. They're a little bit of the shinier objects. Like, is Kellen Moore going to take it? Now, maybe he would. Maybe Doug would take a job where there's an established GM. Maybe Doug Peterson doesn't. Like, yeah, I'll go work for Mayock, or I'll go work for, who knows, Ryan Pace, or I'll go work for Balky. Is Kellen Moore going to do that? Maybe he would. Maybe Kellen would go, I know what I don't know. That's the beauty. I'm a Pete guy. I trust Mayock or I trust Balky. We vibe. I'll go be the head coach for that guy. Maybe.
Kellen's got a pretty good job right now. Makes a ton of money. His owner loves him. They offered him the Boise State job last year. I think the head coach makes like $1.8 or $2 million. Kellen, I thought I read recently, makes like 3 or 4. Kellen makes a shitload.
Yeah,
of money.
I mean, well, to me, it makes turning down Boise State to remain the Cowboys OC. It makes a lot of sense.
But like, are we sure that Kellen Moore? Because we've seen guys that just are young and have options. Like, is he a lock to take the Jags job to go work for Balky to leave the Cowboys? Like, to me, no.
Well, I think there's a few people in the NFL
he might have a job where Mike just leaves him alone. Him and Dak kind of run the offense with his coaches, and it's probably a pretty incredible gig. Jerry has him over for like dinner.
He played for Chris Peterson, who did not jump at every job that came available to him. And it's not unprecedented. I mean, Josh McDaniels left, came back, and now Josh, it seems like, is just kind of chilling in New England until presumably he's happy to just be there until he gets the Patriots job. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. If you're Kellen, you work for a guy. What if he calls Chris Peterson? What does Chris Peterson say to him? Well, does this job feel like you, or are you just taking a job to take a job?
Coaches are weird, though. You know, they're all wired a little bit differently. Like, we're assuming that he's wired like Chris Peterson. Maybe he's wired. You know, we'll see. I mean, what happens?
Like Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, what happens when he's offered 3 NFL head? Like, they're not.
Yeah.
For me and you and most people, like, a move is a really big deal. I mean, you moved across the bridge. It's a big deal, right? These guys move states. Who did I see the other day? Oh, it was Billy Napier. I was watching UCF Florida. And it's a classic, like the next head coach in the weird spot where he's trying not to be like, overlord. He's trying to just kind of be the chill guy on the sideline. Does an interview like he's really happy, even though his future players are kind of getting worked by a team they should be beating. And he's smiling. He gives a good interview. And I just bring up his Wikipedia page. It's always my move when I want to see a coach. Since 2010, I'm pretty sure I'd counted, he had been at 9 places if you factor in Florida. 9 places. 9. These guys, now I'm not saying Kellen Moore falls under that, but some of these guys, like, and maybe Kellen realized this because of the coach that he played for. His dad was a coach, and he's really just been in one NFL organization, right? He went there as a player, he stayed as a coach. Like, he's led a good football life. A lot of guys don't even Kyle Shanahan had to bounce around, right? All Shanahan's minions, hell, LaFleur bounced around. Like, it's the nature of the business, but I hated the thought of that. It's like, I don't want to live in like 4 different states. Like, what if I don't like it? What if it's cold?
Yeah.
But some guys do not care.
Right? But I got to think that Kellen Moore, who has not been a guy that's been in a lot of places, understands that a good situation is something to be valued.
Well, he's been in 2, Boise and the Cowboys.
And there's worse places to like plant your flag than the Dallas Cowboys offensive coordinator.
And I'm pretty sure Boise is has been one of the fastest growing cities of the last like decade, right?
Oh yeah. But here's the other thing: is like Dallas going to be in the NFC Championship game? Like, he might not be totally hired. I mean, you might have to wait to hire Kellen Moore, right?
But you can talk to him right now.
I know. I'm just saying, like, you might have to wait to hire him.
Yeah. Niners waited once upon a time.
Yeah, that's true. And I would say he's kind of in the same, feels like he's kind of getting talked about in a similar way. Not as long as Kyle had been, but kind of being discussed in the same way. I know
to
this.
me,
If the Raiders hired Kellen Moore, it would feel like, I don't know if it's good or not. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but they just hired one of the most desired candidates.
Yeah.
In that way, it'd feel like a home run.
I would say it'd be very risky. I mean, the jobs that he's going to have the opportunity to coach because of the open jobs are just going to be pretty risky, right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders will be different than like the Jets. It feels like the Raiders are kind of like, all right, you come in here to help us. We got to get over the hump and win, kind of like the Chargers' job was.
Yeah.
Like a first-year Raiders coach not making the playoffs is going to be a failure.
I would say the number one question, if I was an agent for these coaching candidates going to interview with the Raiders, is you have to ask Mike or whoever is leading the search and the owner, like, what's the status of Derek Carr in his contract?
Yeah.
If I like him, can we extend him? Or, are you guys good with that? Like, to me, isn't that the number one question? Mm-hmm. You have a quarterback that the league likes. Do you want to keep him? Because there were reports that Mark Davis, going into the interviews, was going to let people know what the status is of his quarterback financially.
Yeah. It'll be interesting what the feedback he gets. What if everybody he talks to says, like, I want him? And he had already kind of thought, like, we're going to trade him.
I would imagine people are going to want. Why would you take the job without him? Who else is going to be the quarterback?
Yeah.
Right?
You got some package deal for Russ or something set up? I don't know.
Chubby Russ or the guy from like 3 years ago?
Yeah, the Russ has been bad for a year and a half, that Russ. But maybe you can get him for a third rounder now. Maybe his stock is plummeted. Not.
Yeah. D'Amico and Robert Saleh would be like, the bad Russ? Well, I've never seen that guy. That guy lights me up.
I did have a bowl game take I wanted to get to. Do you still want to get to that today? We could maybe push that to.
Yeah, I mean, if you got it, let's let it fly.
I mean, here's the deal. I've seen a lot of this. The Rose Bowl, 2 first-round receivers, Haskell the Rascal, the defensive lineman, plus the starting offensive lineman for Ohio State, have opted out of the Rose Bowl. Garrett Wilson's going to be a first-round receiver. Chris Olave is going to probably be a first-round receiver too.
Did those guys declare for the draft, or they just opted out for next year for Ohio State?
No, they're going. I don't know if there's officially declared for the draft, but they're going to the draft.
Okay.
Jackson Smith and Jigba is a sophomore who turned out, by the way, was the leading receiver at Ohio State because those other guys got a lot of attention. He was in the slot, led the team in receptions and yards. But those other guys combined for 2,000 yards.
They're good.
They're really good players, and they opted out. And so there's been a lot of discussion about like, we love the Rose Bowl. Can NIL save the bowls because players are opting out of bowls, as they have been for a few years? This is the first time really we've been able to add NIL to the discussion. And my answer to that question is no. NIL cannot save the bowl games. A playoff can save some of the bowl games, and all you need to save is some of the bowl games, because I checked the numbers, John. 34% of the viewership in 2019 among non-college football playoff games came from 3 bowls, the 3 biggest non-playoff games that year.
Rose Bowl, Fiesta, Cotton.
I think it was Rose, Sugar, Peach. Maybe the Fiesta was 4th, some variation of those. But those were the games that got the double-digit million views. Okay.
Yeah, I guess the Sugar would be an SEC opponent versus a Big Ten opponent.
It just depends if it's in the playoff or not. But that's going to be one of your biggest games every year, right?
Yeah.
And my take on it is, the 32nd pick of the NFL draft this year is going to get probably over $12 million. The 33rd pick is going to get probably over 2. So there's about a $10 million difference in one draft position in the NFL.
God, the owners are sneaky there. How does that, I thought it drops off like a cliff like that?
Off a cliff. Okay.
We ain't guaranteeing shit, guys.
And so if you're a first round potential pick, we're like, oh, NIL, we'll let you do it. We'll set up an autograph signing for you at the Rose Bowl. Like,
is that something people were talking about? Autograph signings?
No, it's just the people are trying to find ways, whatever it would be. Are you going to set up some autograph signings? You help them get sponsorships. And my point is, whatever your idea is, you have to make up a large amount of money here. Okay, Daughtry? You have to make up a large amount of money to get my like $12 million. So what are you going to do? You're going to pay for my insurance premium? Whatever that is, maybe $20K plus another how much on top of that? Because this is what I'm putting in jeopardy. Jalen Smith went from a top 10 pick to a second rounder when he got hurt in a bowl game.
And I'm pretty sure that was like the Sugar, the Fiesta, or one of the big ones, right?
Was it a playoff game?
No, it was Notre Dame, Ohio State. I think they both missed the playoffs, but it was easily the best non-bowl game, the best non-playoff. It was a big game with a ton of NFL players. Ruined his career. I mean, I guess he ended up getting a second contract, but it was kind of out of guilt for Jerry. It felt like more than like true play. Then they ended up cutting him.
Yeah.
But it is not worth. I told you this a while back, and I didn't think, I'm not sure you quite realize, like, these Ohio State guys were not going to play in the Rose Bowl. The receivers, I didn't know, like, I didn't have the breakdown of position by position, but I just knew the receivers were viewed as top 15 picks. And they had all played in the national championship last year. So it'd be one thing. It's like, the COVID season, they didn't get a bowl game. They just want one last time with their boys. They won. They beat Clemson last year. Like, they've seen the mountaintop in college football. Now it's time to get paid. The moment they lost to Michigan and got bounced, like, because you agree they wouldn't have opted out if they were in the playoffs.
Right.
But, like, playing Utah in a Rose Bowl game to them just doesn't mean anything.
No, I'm not surprised at all that they've opted out of this game.
I thought you thought they were going to play a couple weeks ago.
Well, maybe I did. I mean, I might have thought they were going to play, but I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised by it. I go, okay, I get it.
That's why we threw them in the parlay.
So, I don't know what you do other than you expand the playoff. Now, it's been suggested, Cam Worrell suggested to me, well, you give players a cut of the bowl. Like, you give them some of the money from the game. You say 20% or whatever the percentages of the money is going to go to the game.
You ever done a business deal? That's not the way it works.
Well, it's the players. I don't think is the Rose Bowl freaking out. How much less money is the Rose Bowl going to make? The bowls are not that interested, but I think the health of college football needs them to find a way to get more of the best players to stay for the postseason. And to me, the simplest way to do that is by expanding the playoff. If Chris Olave doesn't want to play in the Rose Bowl, $20,000 isn't going to get him to play in the Rose Bowl.
Love Utah in this game.
Yeah, by the second, more and more and more.
Yeah.
I think they're still a 5.5-point underdog.
CJ Stroud's still one of the better players in the and I would imagine the backup wide receivers are probably going to be decent. Like,
that's why we've already put them in our parlay.
Can you, if you have a redshirt freshman, it used to be when I worked at Fresno State, it was like past the 5th week. Now it's just based on a game on the given season. Couldn't you just play a redshirt freshman in that game and still not burn his redshirt year?
Depends how many games he's played. You can play 4 games.
Yeah, I'm just saying, hypothetically, he had redshirted the whole season because the wide receivers, he hasn't played at all. Wouldn't I just be allowed to start him in this game? Get him some free reps?
Absolutely. It's free reps. You get 4 games of free reps if you haven't redshirted before.
Now, they haven't played in games, but I would imagine Ohio State has some reinforcements. That would be the nervous part about betting on this game. Like, they could have, like, oh, my God, there's Guy Haberman, this redshirt freshman, 7 stars from Florida, and he goes for 3 touchdowns against Utah. Like, that's possible.
I think the name you're looking for is Marvin Harrison Jr.
They have Marvin Harrison's kid as their backup wide receiver?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good genes. Keep an eye on that. I saw someone wrote, like, maybe it was like one of the college, it was Andy Staples. Diggs had his, like, 11th interception this season. And Andy Staples quoted it like, can you imagine this gene pool if the guy turned out to be a wide receiver? Like Stephon, his brother, he's become a great wide receiver. Or maybe it was like, comment was like, this gene pool would probably also replicate a great wide receiver. It's like, yeah, it did.
Great take.
Yeah, these guys, man.
So
he was being sarcastic, but it was fun.
Oh, he was being sarcastic.
He was being sarcastic.
Oh, okay.
He covers college. I mean, he knows who Stephon Diggs is.
All right, good.
Did you see him the other day against New England when he scores his touchdown and he goes the front row. He goes, you, shut the fuck up, and he just walks. Some people thought he might have said something different. I thought that's what he said.
It sounded pretty clear as day to me. That's what he said.
Yeah.
I wish he had done fuck you. You're cool. I'm out. But
yeah,
that version was good.
He was pretty good. I mean, he roasted J.C. Jackson in that game.
So, in any event, we're supposed to get some CFP games on Friday night. We'll talk before then. Hopefully, we get them. But our parlay depends on it. What's our number? Someone asked earlier about the lock of the week. We'll get to the lock of the week on Wednesday, unless you want to jump on Utah, 5 plus 5.5. But our parlay. This is a big swing we're taking here.
Yeah, it's a college football underdog parlay is what I would call it. We took Utah. But
These are money line bets.
We also took the 2 underdogs, Michigan, Georgia, 7 points. That'd be a big win for Harbaugh. we might have taken not the Cincinnati Bengals guy, but the Cincinnati Bearcats as a 14.5-point underdog. But we took them money line. When you combine all three, $100 pays $47. So we'll see how it goes.
Can you imagine how great the Rose Bowl is going to be if we hit both of the Friday bets?
Be absolutely incredible. I had an NFL executive that told me he did a Cincinnati game this year, and he was blown away by how they looked in person physically, and he does the SEC, and how talented they are. And he thought that Bama, which I watched a lot of Alabama this year, easily could have lost 4 games. And he's right. I mean, they could have. This is not Bama's offensive line's not as great this year. Mechie, who was like their next, even though I was told he was not going to be a first-round pick, he's probably more like a 50 to 75 guy, but he did tear his ACL. Cincinnati has what many believe to be the number 1 corner in the draft, a guy that could go in the top 10. Well, they have Ohio State transfer, who's like their fast guy, who's going to be a top 15 pick. Well, if this guy truly is a top 10 corner, if he can just neutralize that guy, Cincinnati's got an NFL quarterback. They have NFL players on skill guys. They have an NFL corner. I mean, it'd be a huge upset, but, you know, when you start talking it out, like this is not some of the power. Even Bama's team last year, right, kind of went unscathed. They were just better than everyone else. This is not that.
Been on the road at Notre Dame. Not that Notre Dame's amazing, but
that was an impressive win.
It was.
I watched that game. They kicked their ass.
Yeah, I've been really impressed when I've watched them. Now, they almost lost to whoever that was late in the year. I wanted to say ECU. It wasn't ECU.
I saw Fickle just say that he thought, and listen, I don't think he was making an excuse, that the wear and tear after the Notre Dame game of feeling under the microscope and having to prove yourself, you know, of just like, we're not beating these guys by, it was kind of old school college football, like when you and I were kids. It was always, you know, the good teams were obsessed. Like, you didn't win by enough. Like, it got exhausting.
Yeah, interesting.
It'll be really nice when we go to 12-team playoffs. We don't have to, like, just win the game. You know?
Yep.
Or lose the game. Oregon didn't beat this team by enough. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also
some of that's true. I mean, if you're playing a bad team, but
yeah, the style points of it all. But by and large, it hasn't really come down to that for the most part in the playoff. It's just come down to the, you know, by and large, the win-loss records kind of separate by the end.
Historically, a lot of blowouts in the first round of the college football playoff, I think.
Yeah, thankfully, there's no Notre Dame. I don't think Harbaugh's immune to a blowout, unfortunately. Although I didn't think he'd beat Ohio State, and he did. So maybe
I had the thought last night in bed. It's weird what I think about in bed. How many Harbaugh's lost some big games? A lot of times it's been by big time quarterbacks. You see that little guy that Georgia's rolling out? You think that guy's going to kick Harbaugh's ass? I thought, like, I don't know if Michigan's going to win. I'm going to bet on them. We obviously did bet on them. Stetson Bennett is going to light them up.
Did you see Stetson Bennett's quote about when asked about social media?
No.
He said, I don't want to hear myself talk about heart surgery, so why do I want to hear some guy on Twitter that doesn't know anything talk about football? That's a good quote.
Yeah, it's a great quote.
And then I saw somebody follow.
Is Bennett going to light them up for a couple touchdowns? Like, their defense is big time.
No. They could win. And, as much as I would love our bet to hit, it's funny, I also would love Saban versus Harbaugh in the national championship game. So, in other words, if we lose the first game, I'd rather just lose the second game, too.
Would you say if Cincinnati went on to win the national championship, in our adult life, it's the best upset we've ever seen?
Yeah,
because Brad Stevens never
Georgia
won it.
And some combination of Michigan and Georgia and Alabama. Brad Stevens did go to the Final Four twice, which is pretty crazy, but no, he didn't win. Gonzaga has not won a national championship, and now it's got to the point with Gonzaga where we don't treat them like the little engine that could, like they once were.
What the hell is
the difference? But when they win a title, it'll be insane when Gonzaga wins a national title, and it won't get the credit it deserves because we just talk about them like they're Duke now. But they're Gonzaga.
But but currently they play like they're Michigan football.
Yeah, absolutely. That one's more of a lifetime achievement award, like this is nuts. Although that's happened in basketball before. In football, it doesn't really happen. Right? At the end of the day, your national championship games are Alabama, Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, Clemson, Alabama, Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon.
I'd say the biggest upset we've seen in football in the last couple decades would be that Boise game is one that stands out, right? Playing Oklahoma with Adrian Peterson. Did Sam Bradford
Yes.
get hurt in that game? I think he was on that team.
Josh Heupel?
No, I mean this was 06. I think it was Sam
Did he get
Bradford
hurt?
was the quarterback. Maybe Adrian got hurt, or I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it was Sam Bradford and Adrian Peterson was the game.
It was definitely Adrian Peterson. I don't remember Bradford getting hurt in that game. Bradford played. I mean, Boise State was kicking their ass until Oklahoma came back. But yeah, I mean that is one of the signature upsets in college football for sure. It was the Statue of Liberty play with Ian Johnson, Jared Zabransky. I guess he couldn't have been on the cover of NCAA college football, but I thought maybe he was the Boise State quarterback. Yeah, he was.
Bradford wasn't playing.
Who was the quarterback?
Some guy named P. Thompson threw 3 picks.
P. Thompson.
Final score was 43-42. That's a pretty legendary game.
Oh, man. They had a hook and ladder early in that game, too, that gets forgotten on that, that drive.
I think the hook and ladder got them to the overtime, right?
Yeah.
And then the overtime score was 8-7. I mean, they went for 2. That's a guy was ahead of his time. I mean, Harbaugh, Brand Staley
how hard is the Statue of Liberty handoff, too?
And he walked into the end zone. Right?
Oh, my God.
Close.
That was cool. Proposed. Paul Thompson.
Oklahoma had 5 turnovers in the game.
They were down. What was the largest Boise lead? Do you have the box score in front of you?
Boise would have been up 28 for 17.
I think Zabransky threw a pick 6.
They potentially could have been up 28. I'll go the play-by-play. They were up.
They were up and in control of the game is the point.
They were up 27-10. Boise was. Then that guy named Adrian Peterson helped bring him back.
27-10. Wow. That would have been a heartbreaking bowl loss.
It was.
I mean, for Boise, if Boise had lost, it would have been heartbreaking. Hey, go to nokidhungry.org/ham. We are still running this campaign fundraiser, trying to get to $25,000. We're over $22,000. It's an incredible cause. The cause only gets more urgent by the day, not less so. The amount of money that's in there already is really, incredible to have over $22,000 raised for No Kid Hungry at nokidhungry.org/ham. That's where you go. Whatever amount you can donate is greatly used for a great cause to help families, communities, and namely kids that don't know where their next meal might be coming from. Scary, scary thing, an awful thing. And you can help. $1 can help create up to 10 meals. So it tells you what $25 or $50 or $100, whatever you're comfortable giving can do at nokidhungry.org/ham.
Well, we only got a couple of years left in the fiscal year of 2021. Tax deductible, guy. Tax deductible. So anything that you donate, you can write off. So if you want to get to that lower tax bracket to avoid, giving your money for them to waste it and actually do something and impact lives, nokidhungry.org/ham.
Nokidhungry.org/ham. All right. Thanks to everybody for hanging out. We'll be back, I think, on Wednesday, maybe a little later. We'll see what happens with 49ers practice and Jimmy Garoppolo. But until then, share it. Hit that like button if you're watching the YouTube. Hit the like button on your way out the door. Thank you very much. If you are listening, particularly on iTunes, go leave us a review, 5 stars. Leave a question in the mailbag. We'll get back to the mailbag soon. And in that question, you can also tell us your favorite bar to hang at. That's just a little way to connect across this fine nation. NoKidHungry.org/ham and podcast, iTunes, Apple Podcast reviews. Much appreciated.